Hi everyone, welcome to another Craftyhallett video. In this video I'm going to show you how to make one of these magic exploding boxes and a matching card. The idea for these exploding boxes isn't mine. I first saw them on a website that I'll put a link to called magicboxes.co.uk, and the lady there has the most amazing boxes. She does fantastic things. She doesn't post very often, but what she does post is astonishing, so you should check it out. But anyway, this is my Stampin' Up version of it, which I made using the Best of Butterflies stamp set, the Morning Meadow stamp set, and just a little banner greeting from the Banner Greetings set. But you can put in butterflies. You don't have to put in butterflies in the middle of the box. I've also done them in the past with a wedding cake with butterflies coming out. I've done them with flowers, and I've done them also with a dress form in the front and little love hearts coming out. So there's lots that you can do with them, lots of variety. So what is an exploding box? Well, what happens when you open the lid is, here's the lid of the box. You can see the sides and the lid, and when you pull the lid off, the sides drop down and you have a host of butterflies popping out. You can hide secret little pockets in these as well, in these bits if you want to, for putting notes in. I've done them that you can pull a tag out. But as you can see, the butterflies sit on a piece of acetate that I've covered in flowers, and you can put a message in there as you wish. So to seal the box back up, you just close it on itself and grab the lid. Oh, and the inside of the lid, there's a little space for a message if you want it as well, and pop it on top. So I'm not going to show you how to do the card, because the card's really quite simple, and I'm sure that if you can make cards, you'll be able to follow it once you've seen what I do with the rest of the things. So this is going to be a bit of a start-stop, here's one I made earlier video. For those of you who are English, who watch Blue Peter, you'll be hearing a lot of the here's one I made earlier. So to start the base box, you're going to need a piece of 12 by 12 cardstock. I'm using the Coordinations one, which is new from Stampin' Up. It's just a little bit thicker and gives you a little bit more oomph and give. And so what you're going to do is put it in and score it initially at 4.5. And again at 7.5. And then you're going to turn it round and score it again at 4.5, and again at 7.5. Can you see now that you've got a crisscross here that you've scored? So you've, just to repeat, you've scored at 4.5 and 7.5 and turned and done the same. Now you're going to put your cutter in. So move your scoring one out of the way and choose your cutting part of the trimmer, and line the card up, and you're going to cut from the bottom up to that 4.5 inch line there, and stop. So you line it in and line the trimmer up as far as that line, and then put it in again at the next score line and do exactly the same. And then you can turn around and do the others. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a pair of scissors. So I'm going to show you how to use a pair of scissors as well. So you can cut with the scoreboard, with the trimmer. Alternatively, you can cut with a pair of scissors, and it might just be easier to show you what I'm doing if I do it that way. So you're cutting off these squares. Don't worry, it may seem a bit wasteful having these squares cut off, but it's not. You can just keep them from another project. I'm sure you'll be able to find something to do with a little square. So I'm going to cut those up all the way around. Now you can resize these boxes if you don't want one this size. I've done some that are bigger. I usually start with a 12 by 12, but you can start with 2 bits of A4 and cut them and put them together as a cross if you think this way is wasteful. It's entirely up to you. There's another Stampin' Up demo called Sam, who runs Poozle's Papercraft. Have a look at her YouTubes, because she's very good at doing boxes. If you're into boxes, I'm not. I just like prettily decorating these ones. Here we go. So I have trimmed off all 4 squares, and naturally I'm going to keep those for something else once I've discovered what. And you now have a cross of paper that measures 4.5 inches that way, and 3 across there. And you're just going to lightly scored them across. Don't do it too much because you can rip the card. Now, in order for the box to fall down nicely when you open it, you're going to have to add some weight to this. And the easiest way of adding weight is with mirror card. Now, Stampin' Up! Don't sell mirror card. I think they should. But I got this at just a craft shop. You will need, and it's quite thick, you will need 8 pieces cut at 4 1/4 by 2 3/4 and 2 pieces cut at 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And what you're going to do is you'll need to stick a piece of mirror card on every one of the panels, on the inside and on the outside. So I'm going to do that. I suggest also that you use Tombow for it rather than sticky strip because it won't hold. Or if you want to, you can use the sticky tape, which would work. But don't use something like snail because that won't work as well. And so that's the basic box. And I'll show you in a minute that when that's all been stuck with mirror card. But you then need to look at the panels that are on the box. And these are these panels here that have been decorated. I'm going to show you how to do those. You will start with 8 pieces of Whisper White, 4 inches by 2.5 inches, and 4 pieces of Whisper White, 2.5 by 2.5. So I'm just going to leave those on the side there so you can see them. And I'm going to show you how to do one of each. And then obviously you've got to do all 8, and that would be very dull to watch. You need Wild Wasabi and Soft Sky. Those are the 2 colours I used. You don't have to. You can do your sky in a different blue and you can do your grass in a different green. It's entirely up to you. But just take a sponge, rub it over the ink pad, get a piece of scrap copier paper, stick it underneath just so that you don't make a mess on your mat, and sponge across the paper to do your sky. And don't worry too much about blending it all perfectly because it'll blend and it will look nice. You might ask, well, why don't you just colour up a whole big sheet in the blue and the green and then cut it afterwards? I've tried that. It just doesn't look as good. So then you've done half your strip with the blue, and you take the green and do the same thing again. Sponge it round. And that's that one finished. Now on the box that I did, I put a blue one there and a green one there and a green one in the bottom. Entirely up to you how you do it, but this is the square. These look better if they're all one colour, so I'm just going to do this one entirely in blue. And again, don't try and make a uniform colour. That's not what you're trying to do. It's a sponged light effect to make it look like a bit of watercolour. So I'm going to put those to one side, and obviously when you do the blue petal bit, you're going to come back and discover I've done all 8 of them, but you'll need to do all 8 of them. The next step that I want to show you is how you stamp those. So once give your cards a little bit of a chance to dry, and then I took this stamp, which is from the Morning Meadow set, and I took Stays On just because it's a very good solid permanent black. You ink up your pad, check it's covered, do the first one in the middle with the end of the stalk just hanging off the edge of the page, then ink it up again and do it halfway down, just sort of move it down a bit just to create a bit of motion, and then the other one sort of a third of the way down, so you can see that it looks like a meadow as opposed to everything being uniform. And I always move it along so that some have the tall one at the side or to the other side. Then on this one, because this is a sky one, I'm not going to stamp that with the meadow stamp. I'm going to use the littlest butterfly from the Best of Butterflies set, and I'm just going to put one there and another one somewhere there on the sky one. And again, you're going to have to stamp all of them like that, or not, it's entirely up to you. So now the butterflies. If you look at the one that I made here, you'll see that I coloured the butterflies in 3 shades of red and orange and yellow, and I used Pumpkin Pie and Daffodil Delight and Real Red from the Brights collection. But for this particular box, I wanted to mix it up a bit, and so I've done one in blue. And the colours that I've used for this blue butterfly are Tempting Turquoise and Pacific Point. So how do you make the butterflies? Well, the first thing you're going to need is the butterfly from the Best of Butterflies and Versamark. Stamp your butterfly up with the Versamark. Cut out 6 squares that are 2 3/4 by 2 3/4 for the butterflies. Don't just stamp them all on one piece of paper. It will become clear later why. So take one of the squares, stamp up your butterfly, line your block up with the piece of paper, and this way you don't have to use the Stampin' Majig. You can use the Stampin' Majig if you want to, but this is just quicker and easier. So if you line the top left-hand corner and the top right-hand corner up and stamp, it will become much clearer later why that was important. So I've stamped it with Versamark, and a little bit of something else is still left on the stamp just to add to the grubbiness. I'm someone who doesn't clean her stamps. I now have black embossing powder, and I'm just going to rub that over. Now you might say, oh, but why didn't you use your embossing buddy so that you don't get the static? It doesn't matter, because this is one that we're not going to be we'll be cutting this one out, so it doesn't matter if it has the odd finger mark on it. But if you want to use your embossing buddy and you have one, please feel free. The next step is to heat emboss that. So you get your heat thing and heat emboss it until it goes all nice and shiny, which it will do very quickly because it's not particularly thick. And that should set it quite nicely. There we go. You can see now that my butterfly is all embossed and a bit sticky. Has been done in black. So in true Blue Peter style, here's some I did earlier. Now in terms of colouring them, you need a water brush, or alternatively you can use a paintbrush. Take your darkest colour blue and just squish the pad a little bit. You'll see why in a minute. And then when you open it, you'll have a blob of the ink on the lid. So take your butterfly, pick up the ink and just colour the middle piece with the darker colour. Then give your brush a wipe on my hand or on a baby wipe or whatever you have to hand, and pick up the lighter colour and just sweep that across the rest of the butterfly, filling in the gaps. It doesn't have to be too precise, and in fact if you tried to do them all exactly the same, it would look a bit samey and a bit odd to my mind. Stop. So when I'm doing that, you can then stop at the edges, and if you look at this particular butterfly, you can see here that there's a bit that's meant to be white. Now I think it looks better if you take a white marker and just daub some little white blobs into that area, because it just brings out the whiteness. Entirely up to you. Now, of course, this is the point where we're going to stop the video and you need to do 6 of these. You can do more, but I usually put 5 in the box and 1 on the card, so 6 is enough. If you have any spares, sometimes it's not a bad idea to do 8 of them. Then come back when you've done that. So once your butterflies are all coloured in and they've had a chance to dry, you need to do the next step, which is to take some Crystal Effects glue and add some of the Dazzling Diamonds glitter to it. So here's a little pot of the Crystal Effects, and here is some of the Dazzling Diamonds. I keep them in a plastic pot. And you just need to mix them together. There's a reason for this. Oh, she's spilling glitter everywhere. And that is the glitter sticks better if you do it this way, rather than applying the glue and then applying the glitter. It's just, I've discovered this myself. So I then take one of these technical, pieces of equipment that you can find at any coffee shop, Starbucks, Costa. Put a whole load in your pocket. They're terribly useful. So I now have this wonderful Crystal Effects with glitter in it, which in itself is a joy to behold. And you need to take a big old blob and stick it on the top of each of the butterflies. Then taking your very expensive tool that you've borrowed from a coffee shop, spread it out over the butterfly. You don't really want to go over the edges too much. What this does is, 1, it strengthens the card and makes it easier when it comes to cutting it out. 2, it allows you to bend the butterfly a little bit more, make it more flexible. And 3, it just looks darn pretty because it's glitter and it's crystally glue, and what's not to like. So you need to do all of your butterflies, and then you need to leave them to dry, and ideally you need to leave them to dry for quite a while, 4 or 5 hours at least. Overnight's even better. You don't want to be trying to blow dry them with a heat gun because obviously your embossing will melt. So go away, make a cup of tea, do this, and come back when they've dried. Yeah? Thanks. Now, whilst your butterflies are drying, let me show you how to put the lid together. You need a piece of black card that's 5 by 5, and you need 2 bits of mirror card that are 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. And simply you're going to place the square inside your trimmer, line it up on the 1 inch, and then just come in a smidge, not even, well, just about 7/8. So actually where you're scoring at is at 7/8 of an inch or thereabouts, and do it all the way round because you just want it slightly under an inch all the way around. And then once you've scored on all 4 sides, get your scissors and cut up each of the lines here and here, so that you've cut on all 4, and then turn the flaps over like this and fold each side in on itself and just give it a little bit of a gentle score. And again, to match the rest of the box, you're going to stick the 2 3/4 square mirror card there and the 2 3/4 mirror square there, and then stick the corners of the box together with the same glue just to make your lid, and leave it to dry and then come back later. Okay, so now your box should have dried, and you can take all of the panels that you've coloured up and stamped and stick them on the box. Start on the outside and obviously put the grass at the bottom and the sky at the top, and then on the inside I've been using sticky strip just because I know it's going to hold better, and it just stops the corners from peeling back, because the mirror card can be quite difficult stuff to stick to on the mirrored side, and so in my experience sticky strip works when you can peel the backing paper off, and I can't, so I'm going to leave that before I get bad tempered with it. And I'm just going to put it there, and you can pretend I've stuck that one down. Now we need to look at what you're going to do with the base piece, which is where the butterflies sit. And if you flip the butterfly over, you will see I have stamped and coloured the other side, and I've done that so that when the butterflies are sticking on their acetate and are folded up, if you look at it from an angle, it's not going to be completely white underneath, which is why I just think they look better. So to talk about how the butterflies get mounted onto the acetate, this you will recognise if you're a Stampin' Up person as the plastic boxes that the wood mount stamps used to come in. And the reason I've chosen to cut one up is to demonstrate to you not only practical recycling, because obviously you're going to be putting them all in the new wood mount boxes, but it's to let you know that that's the thickness of plastic that you're looking for. Don't think it's the same thickness as window sheet. It's actually quite a thick plastic. You then need to cut quite thin strips. These are less than 1/4 of an inch wide, so try about 1/8 of an inch wide, and you just cut them with your scissors, and I've cut enough. Also, just to show you that I stick little branches onto these bits of plastic. These are cut with the Secret Garden framelits, and I've used the itty bitty punch just to punch out some flowers with a pearl and stick them on top. And these have come from the Stampin' Up bird punch. They're just the leaf from it, just to fill in the extra bits. And so without further ado, I'll show you how to finish off the back of your butterfly and mount them onto the acetate and stick that in there. Okay, so these are my butterflies that the glue's dried on, and you will understand now why I insisted that you cut a square out the right size, the same size as your block, because we're going to flip it over and stamp the butterfly on the other side. And if you lined up the top left-hand corner of your stamp pad on the piece of paper, you won't need the Stampin' jig to do this. It will do it automatically and get your butterfly in the right spot. So there you go. You can see I've stamped on the other side, and I'm very quickly just going to colour this in. Actually, I won't colour it in. I'll show you how to cut it out. So again, normally when you fussy cut, you'll leave a little bit of a white border. You don't want to do that with this butterfly because it'll look wrong. When you get to the little stameny pokey out bits, you've got a choice. You can either cut them off and have butterflies that don't have pokey out bits, or cut them really, really closely and make sure you don't cut them off. And then the bits that are left round here where you've cut them really, really closely, you can colour in with a black felt tip marker and no one will ever know. So that's what I tend to do with those. And so now I'm cutting out my butterfly along the lines, and obviously you might want to take a little longer to do this because you're not doing it on a video. It's already probably too long and everyone's probably already had enough of. Anyway, there you go, it's cut out, and if you flip it over, you'll see that I was almost pretty darn perfect with my lining up. Good enough, because now you can cover up that. You don't want it exact and precise on the back. It doesn't have to be, because people aren't going to see that much of it. It's just to give a bit of colour so that you don't get a big white expanse on the back of the butterfly. You don't need to put the glue on top of it this time, and you don't need to put the glitter on because you don't want glitter on that side. It's just to colour in the other side. If you didn't want to stamp the butterfly on the back, you don't have to. You could just colour it in blue. That's entirely up to you. So you can see I'm just using a marker to colour in the little sticky out stameny bits. I think that's what they're called. If they're not called that, please do feel free to leave me a comment and tell me what those sticky out bits are called. Then if you take the brush tip of your marker and just run it along the edge where you cut, just to colour up that white bits, because you don't want any white sticking up. This might just be me being a bit finicky. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, if you find this dull. So then, once you've done that to all your butterflies, you're then ready to mount them up on a piece of the plasticky stuff. So you very simply take a strip of the acetate that I told you about, take one of your pre-decorated little, what are they called, little leaves, and then using mini glue dots, I stick a couple on the leaves at various points, because this helps it to stick to the acetate. And then I take the piece of acetate and I stick it about halfway along like this. So it's halfway along the piece of acetate from there to there, and I stick it in the middle. Then I bend over the top piece about 1/2 inch, and I get a Stampin' Up! Stamping Dimensional, stick that on top, and then stick Monsieur Butterfly on top of that. Now you can stick him that way or that way, it doesn't really matter, as long as you mix it up a little bit so that they look like they're flying in different directions. So that's him mounted on his bit of plastic so that he jumps up. Then on your base layer, the layer that's going to go in the bottom of the box, cut 5 little holes using a craft knife, and just poke the end of your acetate sheet through that hole. If it doesn't go through, cut it off at an angle so you've got a point, and just point it through, and then decide upon what width you want, height you want. You don't want them any longer than 4.5 inches. Just bend it over and hold it there. Now don't worry that that's not going to hold firm, because we're going to stick it down in a minute. I'm just going to mount up and do the other butterflies, and I'll be back with you. Now I have mounted up onto acetate all of my butterflies and stuck them through the base layer. I'm going to stick them down onto the box. I've layered on the bottom layer some bits of sticky strip, because you really do want this to go down, and it's quite a tricky fiddly process, but you need to hold up all of the butterflies and make sure they're all tucked in, and then just push your card piece down straight on top of the sticky strip, and that will hold in place all of the ends of your butterflies, so that they're securely held, and then when you open the box, they'll just fly open. So that is that stage done. Next, just to finish off the box, you need to put some things here to cover up where you've stuck the strips through, and I tend to use these little itty bitty flower punches, but you don't have to. And I'm just going to stick them down with little mini glue dots just to cover up that area. I'll finish the rest off at the end, but I just wanted to show you now how you close the box. Here's the lid that I've completed, and I've tied a ribbon. This is the new blue sky, soft sky blue seam binding, and I've just tied that around the top and stuck it down with a bit of sticky strip. You then fold your box up and slot your lid on, and with a bit of luck and a fair wind, it should fit. There you go. That is your completed finished box. And then when your recipient lifts the lid, the sides will fall and the butterflies will pop. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email or put a comment on the blog or a comment on this YouTube video. I hope you've had fun with this, and I really would love to see if people do make them. Can you put a link on so I can come and have a look at what you've made, because I hope that you have as much fun with them as I do. They're quite addictive. Anyway, check out my website if you want more information. It's craftyhallett.co.uk. Thank you very much for watching.